So if you're wanting to formally incorporate a business in Saskatchewan, how do you do that? For starters, what is a corporation? A corporation is a form of legal structure for a business. And the word corp, in English, corpse, corporal means body. In Spanish, cuerpo. In other similar languages, the word is similar. So to incorporate means to embody. So when you incorporate in a business form, you're kind of creating a separate body. It's a separate legal entity. It's almost the same as creating another human, slightly different, but from a business perspective, from a tax perspective, and in general, just in operating the business, it's basically like there's a separate human from the owner of the business or owners, or at least the person who incorporated the business. So if you want to find out more about what a corporation actually is and how it's different from other legal structures, I've made other videos on that on my channel that break down, 25 differences between corporations and proprietorships. And there are a lot of resources online where you can see the differences and the trade-offs and the pros and cons of incorporating. And now the next thing before you incorporate, now that you have a basic idea of what that is asking yourself if it's actually appropriate to incorporate. So in some cases, businesses should never incorporate. In other cases, they should right away. In other cases, maybe they shouldn't for the first few years, and then it makes sense later on. So it depends a lot. It depends on the goals of the owner, the ownership situation, the nature of the business, the industry, the financial goals, the preferences of the owners, things like that. So it is kind of complicated, and there's no one size fits all. It depends on all these different factors. So for me to determine if someone should incorporate or not, I need to have a conversation with them one-on-one. So if you are considering incorporating, but you're not 100% sure if it makes sense to you and you want a second opinion, feel free to reach out to myself. I do offer a free 1-hour initial consultation for new clients, and I'm happy to discuss that with you to determine if it does make sense for you to set up your business as a corporation and actually formally go through that incorporation process in Saskatchewan. Now, if it is the case that you feel comfortable incorporating and that makes sense to you for your business and your situation, then there's two options for that. The first option would be to incorporate federally with the Government of Canada through the CRA website, which typically I don't recommend. It makes sense in some cases, but for most businesses, it's not necessary. And if you do incorporate federally, you still actually have to incorporate provincially as well. Whereas if you incorporate provincially, you don't have to incorporate federally. And now the main benefit for incorporating federally typically would be because you'll get broader name protection of your business name across Canada. Whereas if you're just incorporating provincially, you typically just get name protection for the province in which the business is incorporated. And so the second option there, which is a lot more common, would just be incorporating provincially. So here in Saskatchewan, if you want to incorporate your business, you want to do it in Saskatchewan, then you do that through our corporate registry, which is the ISC, which stands for Information Services Corporation. And that is the organization, the entity where you register businesses and where you formally incorporate businesses. And in order to do that, you can go through a lawyer if you want, or you can do it yourself, or you can reach out to a business consultant like myself to help with that. And basically what you do is start by creating an ISC account online. And then from there, typically the first step is to determine your business name, and then you reserve that business name. So you file an application to get that business name reviewed and then hopefully approved. And if the ISC approves the business name that you want to use, then you can take that and actually incorporate with that name. And they will give you 90 days to actually use that approved name to incorporate with it. And so this is something I do offer and I do provide regularly for clients, guiding them through this incorporation process. So if you are wanting any help with it, again, feel free to reach out to myself. I do offer that free 1-hour consultation, which I will leave a link to in the video description. And I can just make sure that you're on the right track and that incorporating is the right choice for you, and then help you through that process. And the way I set it up is that I guide the client through that incorporation process, and then I pass them off to a lawyer to review everything, to finalize it, to create bylaws, to issue shares, to create the corporate minute book, and just make sure everything is done properly. So now if you want to move forward and actually take the steps to incorporate, as I mentioned, create your account on the ISC website, which I will leave a link to in the description. And from there, you reserve your business name, unless you're wanting to incorporate just using a number and not a business name, which I typically don't recommend. It can make sense in some cases, like if it's just a holding company, But if you're operating a business where you want to advertise under a business name, then you should actually reserve a business name and then incorporate using that business name. And then from there, the next step is actually just doing the incorporation process. And there's just a bunch of steps you have to follow and different prompts that the ISC will ask you to go through. And in terms of pricing, directly from the ISC, currently they will charge you $50 to do the name reservation for a corporation. And then they'll charge you $255 to actually incorporate. So it'll be $305 if you're incorporating with the ISC using a business name. And if you're just going with a numbered corporation, then it'll just be the $255. And when you go through the prompts on the ISC website, some of it is very straightforward. It's just kind of asking the information about the business, where is it located? But some of it is more complicated, like it's going to ask you about officers and directors of the business, how many there are, who are they, what are their titles. It's also going to ask you about the different types of shares that you want for your business. And for a lot of businesses, you don't need a lot of variety of different shares, whereas other businesses, you might want, 8 or 10 different share classes. So that's where it gets complicated, and that's where you'll probably want to work with a professional like myself and a lawyer, or just a lawyer for all of it. But there is a lot of good information on the ISC website where you can find out more about the process of incorporating and what rules you need to follow when it comes to things like choosing the business name that's appropriate for a corporation. And then on top of that, one thing to be really mindful of is that if you do incorporate in Saskatchewan, not only do you have to file a separate tax return for the corporation, but you have to file an annual renewal with the ISC, the corporate registry, for that corporation. And now those two things are two completely separate things. There's the tax return for the corporation that you file with the federal government, just like you file your personal taxes with the federal government. But the annual renewal through the ISC, that's just through the provincial corporate registry, and it has nothing to do with taxes. It's basically just updating your account and keeping it active, and letting the corporate registry know that your corporation still is active and nothing has changed, or if something has changed, like there's new directors, there's new shareholders, things like that. And as of right now, it costs $50 to do that renewal. And if you want, you can do that just on your own on your ISC account for the corporation. But this is something you don't want to skip, because I've seen this before where owners of corporations miss this step, and then what happens is their corporation gets struck off, which basically means it's inactive, and then they basically have to do a revival and pay some money and go through some more steps to bring their corporation back to life, so to speak. So make sure that you are doing your annual renewals. What I recommend is that you put a reminder in your phone every year to do that renewal. And of course, you also want to do your corporate tax return as well every year. And for that, you'll probably want to reach out to an accountant to get some help on that. But so hopefully that was helpful. Again, if you want some assistance with the incorporation process, or you just want to speak with me to determine if it actually makes sense for you to incorporate, or just want a second opinion, feel free to reach out and book an initial consultation with myself. And I will leave that link and other links to the ISC in the video description below. If you like the video, please click like. And if you want to, feel free to check out my YouTube channel here, where I currently have over 175 videos that cover business management and business startup topics.